Okay, today we are looking at the Mammon Issue, and I'll explain why I was brought the idea of our center of power into our meditation. But this talk is based on a familiar scripture. No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. I don't know about you, but I have at different times in my life found this to be a kind of a troubling statement, because it looks like we're to deny ourselves. For many, this statement has been somewhat confusing. It seems to suggest that we set aside our material needs and interests and devote ourselves to a contemplative life of prayer. Considering other statements from Jesus, I do not think this is what he meant. He acknowledged that we have material needs, and seeking first the kingdom would assure these needs would be met. So we have to, I think, kind of revisit this idea of mammon. The deeper I get into the study of the sayings of Jesus in particular, and try to sort those out from how they may have been colored by the authors of the Gospels, and that is the fact that's been acknowledged for years by scholars, that sometimes we are reading the Gospel according to Matthew, for example, and sometimes we're reading the Gospel according to Jesus. And we have to learn to, or should want to learn to be able to separate those two. But I think the ministry of Jesus was not based on what happens to the soul after death. And I think this is a very important realization to have, and you may not agree with this. His focus was on helping people understand how a spiritual being can have a good earthly experience. So I think the whole thing about what happens to you after death is more in the interest of the church. I don't think some of the early followers and some of the early writers understood some of his message. It's pretty clear they didn't, in fact. There's a couple of times when the disciples, he has to explain what he means in a parable. A couple of them get into an argument about who's going to be the most powerful in the new kingdom. And then they complain when he says it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get into the kingdom. And they are kind of freaked out by that. Like, okay, we gave up everything. What do we get? So it's a message from Jesus to how do we successfully live as a spiritual being on this planet. And again, I draw a lot of guidance from the near-death research. What I think they have come up with that is very meaningful to us is that when the average person steps out of their body momentarily, they have a phenomenal experience. That's most people. Once in a while, somebody has a bad experience, but it's fairly rare. And what that tells me is we're not here in this body to become something more that will be, saved eternally. We're already there. We already have that level of existence, that experience. We've stepped into a body. We have lost most of our ability to think, to feel, to know, to be tuned in to infinite wisdom, love. All these people talk about what a loving experience it is beyond anything they can explain. So why is it that when we're in the body, we don't have all of that? We step out instantly, we do. I think the focus of Jesus' ministry was on while we're in this body and how to think of ourselves and live from that spiritual self, the spiritual aspect of us. Because all of us are programmed to put most of our identity in the body. That's why we are concerned about what we will eat, what we will put on. He said there's more to life than that. Meaning there's more to this earthly experience than just thinking about how to take care of this vehicle. But that's where so much of our attention is focused. But I think the primary thrust of his message was, how does a spiritual being live a successful, happy, fulfilled life while we're on this planet? Because when we check out, we're okay. It's about here and now. It's about what is going on now. How do we live a more successful life right here and now? There's another thing that's always fascinated me with the near-death research is when somebody steps out of their body and they're confronted by or met by other beings of light or whatever. Sometimes it's people they know. But they are told, it's not your time yet. You've got to go back. And it's been a curiosity to me. What I think they're doing is they're telling people that they have to go back because they took on a body for a reason. And they have forgotten that reason. And rather than let them continue on and then remember later why they went. If you wait too long, you're going to miss the bus. You can't get back. So whatever the being of light is doing, the intention is good. I'm not going to tell you why you decided to come to do this. But and it's up to you to go back and find out. Have you ever walked from one room to another to get something and you forgot why you went? Well, if we have that problem, we can well imagine that since we've come here, we probably knew why we came, but then we were a baby. We were a teenager. We forgot everything at that stage. Young adult, so forth. If we can walk into another room and forget why we went there, could we not also forget why we came here? But wouldn't we like to know? Wouldn't it be nice when you're in that other room if you did suddenly remember, and sometimes we do. One comedian said, all you got to do is go back and sit down again, and that'll jog your memory. You remember why you went in. But I think it's a lot like that. We go through a lot of changes. When we're born into this planet, into this body, we don't have any of our faculties. We're back to diapers, or we're in diapers. We can't talk. We can't walk. We can't feed ourselves. We can't do much of anything but cry. And we can giggle, and, we can show expressions and so on, but we can't tell anybody what's on our mind. So say you step out of your body right now and you have forgotten why you chose to come here, and somebody says you can't make this transition yet because you have not done what you wanted to come here to do. That would be like going into the other room and not getting what it is you went to get, why you went in that room in the first place. And so you got to start over. But in the case of a soul, you start over. That means you become a baby. And I don't really want to do that again. I don't remember much about that, but I do remember the teen years, and I definitely don't want to do that. So I see these folks as these beings of light as doing people a service. People that come back, that have to come back, or are told have to come back, they're angry because their experience is so beautiful they don't want to come back. But if you suddenly remember why you come here, why you came here, and the reason I think that we do choose to come here is because it is a difficult experience to have. And why would any of us choose a difficult experience to have if we didn't have a reason for making that choice? I don't remember myself a specific reason that I came here, but what I go by is what interests me. What are the things that interest me? And I have pursued the thing that interested me most, and that is the career as a minister. I'm not particularly interested in the administrative side of ministry. I don't think I came back for that. I could get that in any business. But I came back because I'm interested in spiritual concepts, and I'm interested in passing those on or helping others understand how to have somewhat of a better experience as a spiritual being that is occupying a physical body. We're not here, I don't think, to just tough it out and just see how much faith we can have at the end of the day, how strong we can be through all the hardships of having a body. I don't think that's the purpose. I think we came here because if you think about what is the body, it's a physical interface. It's the only way we can communicate with people on this planet. If I don't have a body, I could stand up here and talk all day long and you couldn't hear a word I said and you couldn't see me. So I can't communicate with you. I might be able to have a one-way conversation where you're talking, I can hear you, but you can't hear me. So I put this thing on so I can come here and communicate, so I can have an experience. And it's not necessarily all the hardships that go along with that. But I think when we make the choice of taking on a body, we understand how temporal it is. I'm 69 years old. It seems like I ought to be 20. It goes very fast. And most of you are older than I am, so you know what that's like. It has nothing to do with the body. The soul has nothing to do with the body. This is our vehicle that we have to have it to experience earth life. Well, why do I want to experience earth life? There's something that I want to do. And I think every single one of us have that. And that one of the most important things we can do is meditate on that. Why would I have wanted to take this on and have this experience? And I think the answer that we come up with, there's no universal answer. We probably all have a different reason. But to honor our own reason for making that choice. I think life is about choice. I think that's a very important aspect of it. I don't think that we are just cast into this plane by accident, by some biological accident. I think that we make the choice, the soul makes the choice to step in. And from what much research says, we also make the choice as to when we go out. There's been a lot of studies done on that people will wait. If they're coming to the end of their life, they'll wait for some special event to transpire before they actually go. And that's a pretty well-known fact. But this whole thing, this whole life thing is a blip, and we want to know how to live on this plane as successfully and as well as possible. I just don't think Jesus was concerned about what does your soul need to learn? What does the soul of the world need to learn? What we need to learn is, while we're in this body, how do we live in it successfully? How can we be in this world, but not be overcome by it, overrun by it? I think that was the message. That was his ministry. So where is our power? We should not think of mammon strictly as a quest for material gain, but more as how we think of our center of power. Do we draw our power from without, from positions and possessions, or are we empowered from within? And see, the world that Jesus was born into was just like the world we live in now. Most of us are trained or programmed to think that we build our power from the outside in, that we get an education, we make as much money as we possibly can through some career. We don't have to necessarily like that career. A lot of people don't like what they do. But we need some way to earn an income so we can have things, so we can have possessions. And a lot of times we determine who we are by what we have. That's how we measure ourselves. And that, in fact, is a term used all the time. What's a person's worth? And it's measured by what they have. It's what they have in their bank account, their stocks, funds, and where they live, and the possessions that they have. Spiritually speaking, we all have the same thing. We're all expressions of the infinite. We're all limitless beings. And most of us don't think in terms of that. We think of what is the net worth of that person? What do they have? We talk about powerful people. When you tune into any media, they'll refer often to powerful people. What do they mean? They usually mean rich and famous people. People in positions of power. But how often do we find that people in positions of power are really lowlifes? They really lack character. They lack morality. And this is not all of them, of course. But we find this is quite common. A person in a position of power is not necessarily a person centered in power, centered in their own spiritual power. In fact, they draw their power from that position. I am that. I'm a senator. I'm a congressman. I'm this or that. I'm a powerful person. But in truth, they may be very weak. Weak in character, weak in morale or morality. And that's not a judgment, it's just a fact. It's something we see every day. And we can look at our own personal life. Why do I need to be the head of that committee? Why do I need to be the head of that group? Why do I need to go to the most popular church in town, which apparently you'll have not made that choice. But I have run across many people who go to a church not because they like it, but because it is socially correct. It's empowering. It adds to the outer self, the power of the outer self. It's a powerful position. So it's an important thing to distinguish that a powerful person is one who is spiritually centered, not one who is holding a position of power. Because there are many, actually, if you read about the state of mind, the sociopathic state of mind, there are many heads of corporations that are sociopathic. They seek out positions of power because they themselves feel quite powerless. And they do all the right things. They are people pleasers, but they will climb over anybody's back to get where they want to go because they need that position of power. And we do live in a society that honors that. We can't tell the difference. And they usually do, according to the research, they do good jobs at what they do. A sociopath is a very good leader. But it doesn't mean that they are good people. And it certainly doesn't mean they're powerful people in the terms that we're talking about right now. But is our power in the armor that we're wearing, or is it coming from our own awareness of our oneness with God? Where is our center of power? So mammon would be if we're drawing our power from an outside source. It's not necessarily having anything to do with money. Because I don't think Jesus was really anti-money. He was not anti-possessions. When the rich young ruler came up to him, he obviously wore his identity in a way where it could be recognized just by looking at him. Look at me, I'm rich and, I'm well off. I'm rich and powerful. I'm in a powerful position. And Jesus picked that up right away. And he said, sell everything you've got. He doesn't mean everybody had to do that. He was supported by wealthy women. Jesus' ministry was supported by wealthy women. And he never once condemned any of them for being wealthy. He condemned people like scribes and Pharisees for using their position of authority to exercise their power over other people or to be recognized or whatever. He attacked positions of power. He didn't attack possessions. He attacked attitudes and tried to put those in perspective. He was saying to the rich young man, the reason you feel something's missing is because what is missing is you. You have not embraced yourself as a spiritual being. Your identity is in what you have, not in who you are. He didn't explain all that because he, I'm sure, knew the man would not get that. I've had a lot of occasions where I do not explain what unity is to someone who I know won't get it. They won't understand it. Won't begin to understand what I'm talking about. And I don't look down my nose at them by any means. I just understand they won't get it. Because they are more interested in attending the right church and being at the right place and surrounding themselves with things that contribute to their sense of well-being and power, outer things. It's not a judgment. Again, it is a realization that something for all of us to look at. Where is my center of power? And I've always pointed out, am I expressing a strength or am I protecting a weakness? If I'm expressing a strength, I always am going within and seeking to bring out more of who and what I am. If I'm protecting a weakness, I may be battling really hard to keep that position. Because without it, I'm nobody. That's protecting a weakness. And again, it's not that positions aren't important, because they are. Jesus had a position. He was a minister. He was making money doing it. They say he was quite wealthy. I don't think I agree with that. But he had a seamless robe, and that was kind of an unusual thing to have. It was certainly a symbol of prosperity. But I think his whole message was getting people to say, who am I? And answering that question. Am I what I have, or am I something greater? That's the seek first the kingdom. That kingdom is you. It's your soul connected to the infinite. And when you do that, things begin to fall in place. That's why I think Jesus pointed out to nature. There's something that it's doing that's working. Its needs are met. The birds of the air, the lilies of the field, all that. There's something it's doing right. And it's not depressed. It's living fully every moment. How is that working? And how is that different from what I'm doing as a human being? I'm approaching life as if it's a battlefield. I've got to fight to keep my own. And that's the thing, the prosperity message. I don't fully understand what he's talking about. I understand what he's talking about. I don't fully understand how to do it, how to make that transition into doing it. But that's my goal, is to understand it. Because there's something to what he's saying. Because I can, myself, can look out at nature and say, this stuff knows how to do it. It knows how to do what I'm trying to do. Let's be all I can be without a care in the world, expressing who and what I am. I said last week, I think, to go out and just meditate on a dandelion in your yard. Don't kill them all. Leave one so you can have a center of a focus. That thing is doing what you and I want to do. It's fully expressing itself in this now moment. It's not trying to be a rose, not trying to be anything else. It appears to be quite happy because it's beautiful. And we consider a dandelion a weed, of course, something we need to get rid of. But dandelions don't think that way. So we got this bear under the bed thing again. A child who fears there is a bear under the bed will find comfort and empowerment in a nightlight. But where does this bear live? In this case, Mammon is the belief in the reality of the bear. As long as the child believes in the bear, the nightlight will provide a sense of protection. And I've been that child who believed there was a bear or a monster under the bed. And we look for outer protection. A nightlight will do it. That'll ward off the bear. I had to become an adult before I realized how impossible it would be for a bear to get under my bed. But what is that? Where does that bear live? It's fear. It's an inner perception, and we try to build protection against that thing. Well, where is that thing, and how do we build protection against it? We do it by realizing the bear's perception. It doesn't exist except in my own mind. But Mammon would be believing the nightlight actually gets rid of the bear. And in my case, it did. Because as long as that nightlight was there, there were no bears under my bed. So I know it got rid of them. But you see how silly that is, to think that a nightlight could actually chase off a bear. So it's a perception, it's a shift in perception. Mammon is the belief in the nightlight. It's a belief in the thing. And you cannot believe in that thing and worship God at the same time, or awaken to your own spiritual center at the same time. As long as you need that nightlight, that protection, that outer thing to keep you safe, you're not going to rely on that inner reality. I have not had a bear under my bed for a long time, and life is a lot better without bears under the bed. So just think about that, because the nightlight has no power whatsoever to get rid of a bear, except the one that you have made up in your own mind. And so how do you deal with that bear? I think this was the message of Jesus. This was the purpose of his ministry, of get rid of perceived bears. Here's how to do it. Why do you worry about what you're going to eat and drink, what you're going to put on? Can you, by all of this worry, add 1 inch to your life? 1 day, 1 moment. I think his focus was on dissolving the bears and learning how to live on this planet, in this body, with reduced ability, but to get back to the creative reason that you are here in the first place. I think that's what he sparked people to try to do, to get them to remember. The ultimate protection from the bear is the realization that it is a figment of the imagination. The child who comes to this realization has transitioned from serving Mammon, unfounded fear, to serving God, the true center of power. An actual nightlight, of course, is a good and useful accessory. And bears that stay out from under our beds are okay too. I have no problem with most bears. I used to have problems with them when we would go out camping. That was always on my mind in a tent, thinking about bears. And I don't think that was a carryover from childhood. It was a carryover from reading newspaper articles of bears that ripped through sides of tents and pulled people out and ate them. That is a possibility. But that's a real bear, you see. That's a real possibility. So that's kind of different than the one you imagine. But what I will have to say is I worried more about bears I never saw than bears I actually encountered. I've only encountered a couple of bears in my life, and none of them have been too threatening. So it's like the coward dies 1,000 deaths. You know, if you're going to be afraid of something that doesn't exist, you're going to be afraid most of your life. So it's an important thing to remember. An actual nightlight is, of course, a good and useful accessory. And bears that stay out from under our beds are okay too. We want to recognize those times when we are relying on some form of mammon to alleviate a fear that can and should be permanently eliminated from within. Think about something in your life right now that has you baffled and has you afraid. And maybe you don't have anything right now, and that's a good thing. But most of us have something in our life that we would like to change. We would like to get rid of it. We may fear growing old. We may fear dying. We may fear running out of money. We may fear not being able to pay the next light bill. But whatever it is, let's start with that thing as a bear under the bed. Because you're here now, and you have within yourself unlimited power. Where is your center of power? Does it depend on getting over that fear, that is, resolving that thing? Or can you resolve it right here while the thing looms, while it's still there, or while you think it's still there? That, to me, is what it means to learn to live successfully on this planet. It's to resolve these bears under the bed that are in our minds that are not real. They're figments of our imagination. Something we are fearing that we can do nothing about at this very moment. We're responding in fear. We're degrading the quality of our experience. So that's the perceived threat is what we want to learn to eliminate. We want to connect with that indwelling, empowering spirit that enables us to walk fearlessly through life, to know when challenges arise, as they will, that we have the means to handle them. It comes back to a lot of times we borrow trouble. It's a what if this happens, and what if it goes, south, and what if this or that. We run all these scenarios through our minds that we're not actually dealing with, but we may, and that can go a long way toward destroying our peace of mind. To seek first the kingdom doesn't mean that we leave our doors unlocked or forgo practical self-protective measures. It means we find our true center of power first within ourselves, dispel imagined bears, and live with the peace and confidence of the eternal being that we are. And I think that's the point. We're here for something we have chosen, and that may be on the back burner because we're so concerned with other things. So if we want to get creative about living here on this planet, my suggestion is learn to identify the bears under your bed. Where's your center of power? How are you protecting yourself? Are you protecting yourself by what you have or by what you are? To get out of the fear thing altogether and say, why in the world am I here? Why would I have chosen to come here? And if you can't come up with some answer, what am I going to do with this day? Why am I getting up in the morning? What do I want to do today? How do I want to use this day, this life today? And to bring ourselves back into a creative state of mind where this life on earth means something and it means what we make it mean, the meaning that we bring to it. Thank you for watching this week's program. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with others. We want to reach as many people as we can, and we appreciate your help. If you'd like to help support this ministry, just click the donate card at the top right-hand corner of your screen. Your financial support means a lot to us. We have many subjects in our video lineup, so feel free to take a look. If there's a topic you don't see and would like me to address, just put it in the comment section. I'd love to know what's on your mind. To subscribe to this channel, simply click our logo. Thanks again for your interest in independent unity, and have a wonderful week.